Hello! Did you know that Ser Bueno means to be good and Estar Bueno means to be tasty? How about the fact that Ser Listo means to be smart and Estar Listo means to be ready? How would you even know that? Today we continue our series on Ser and Estar in Spanish. In a previous video we discussed the basics, that is, there are two verbs to be in Spanish. We use ser to describe permanent things, such as descriptions, occupations, characteristics, time, origin, and relationships. And we use estar to describe temporary things, such as position, location, action, condition, and emotion. This works most of the time, but there are some adjectives that can be used with both ser and estar. Sometimes translation doesn't change, but the meaning does. And sometimes both translation and the meaning will change. Today we're gonna go through the list of these popular tricky adjectives so that we can get used to them, feel them, and become obsessed with them. This is part 2 in the Ser and Star series. The first part can be found right here. I would suggest you watch it first if you haven't yet. Also, the list of adjectives we are about to discuss is available in a PDF document which can be found in the video description down below for you to download and go at your own pace. Now let's begin. Example number 1. Ser Abierto versus Estar Abierto. Both ser and estar abierto mean to be open, but in case of ser, it's about being an open-minded person, and in the case of estar, it means for something to be open physically. For example, ella es abierta a nuevas experiencias, and la puerta está abierta. In the first example, we're talking about a personality trait, and in the second, we're talking about a temporary state, both of which follow the definitions of ser and estar. We got lucky this time, because the translation doesn't change, only meaning did. But like I said before, please remember that not all of today's adjectives will be so easy. Let's proceed. Example number 2. Ser aburrido versus estar aburrido. This one is easy. Esta película es muy aburrida. ¿Estás aburrido? Vamos al cine. Here we are talking about boring personality versus being bored in the moment. Again, these are basic definitions of ser and estar. Example number 3. Ser blanco and estar blanco. Now, this one is interesting. For example, mi gato es blanco con manchas negras. Los niños están blancos después de la película de terror. In case of ser blanco, we are talking about someone or something being white-colored by nature. And in the second example, estar blanco can also mean to be white, but in this case we're talking about being white at the moment, which naturally happens when you are scared. And being scared is an emotional state, which is a definition of estar. So the logic of the basic definitions of ser and estar is still preserved, but the translation can vary a little. I hope it makes sense. Example number 4. Ser bueno versus estar bueno. Now things are getting interesting. Look at these examples. Mi abuela es muy buena persona, and el café está muy bueno hoy. In case of ser bueno, we are talking about something being good in general, like a moral character or a quality, which is what the verb ser is about. And in case of estar bueno, we are also talking about something being good, but here it can mean two things. We can refer to something being tasty, or it can mean to describe someone who is attractive or hot. Let's add 2 more examples. Los médicos son buenos en este hospital. Ese actor está muy bueno. As you can see, los médicos son buenos is again describing an inherent quality of something or someone, in this case the doctors. However, ese actor está muy bueno means that someone is hot. This is where you need to be careful, because all these 4 sentences can be translated as something or someone being good. But the actual meaning changes depending on whether you use ser or estar. If I say this actor is good with a normal tone, then I probably mean to say ese actor es muy bueno, meaning that I admire this actor's skill. But if I say this actor is good in a horny tone, then I'm probably trying to get into his pants, because what I'm saying is ese actor está muy bueno, which means attractive. Got it? Oh yeah, and what about estar caliente, you ask? You might be thinking, okay, so we use estar for temporary states and feelings. So if it's hot outside and I feel hot, I should just say estoy caliente, right? Wrong. It is a funny mistake lots of people make. Although in Spanish estar caliente does mean to be hot, what it's referring to is the heat in your pants, also known as being horny. But only when it comes to humans. It's actually fine to say that the soup is hot, for example, which is a normal way to use estar. For instance, la sopa todavía está caliente. However, when it comes to humans, estar caliente means that someone is either horny or mad, both of which are referring to the feeling heat somewhere, either in your pants or in your head, but not in your overall temperature. For example, ¿qué le pasa a papá? Le contesté y está caliente. Or Ramón dice que siempre que ve esa película, después está muy caliente. So what I'm trying to say is, if you feel hot, in Spanish you have to say I have heat. Tengo calor. Or if you're cold, you would say tengo frío. Let's continue. Example number 5. Ser cansado versus estar cansado. For example, estudiar medicina es muy cansado, and estoy muy cansada después del ejercicio. In case of ser cansado, we are talking about an inherent quality, something that describes a person or a thing. And in the case of estar cansado, we are talking about the current state you are in, which is temporary. This time we follow the definitions. This one can only be tricky for people who are not native English speakers, because not everyone knows the difference between tired and tiring. And since in Spanish both of them are translated as cansado, it becomes important to know whether you should use ser or estar. Example number 6. Ser cerrado versus estar cerrado. Mi jefe es muy cerrado a nuevas ideas. Las ventanas están cerradas por la lluvia. Here it works the same way as ser en estar abierto, except we're talking about being closed or close-minded person, which is a personality trait, versus something being closed physically, which is a temporary state. Example number 7. Ser divertido versus estar divertido. This one could be slightly tricky. Mi primo es muy divertido, and los niños están muy divertidos en el parque. Ser divertido describes a characteristic of something being funny by nature, and estar divertido is all about having fun in the moment, something we should all be doing more of. Example number 8. Ser enfermizo and estar enfermo. Now, be careful here. Let's start with estar enfermo first. Estar enfermo is used to describe someone who is sick temporarily due to a cold or a flu, for example. You probably already knew that because this is something you would learn on Duolingo on your first week of learning Spanish. For example, no puedo ir al trabajo, estoy enfermo. Easy, right? So if estar enfermo means to be sick temporarily, you would naturally think that ser enfermo means to describe someone who's always sick. Maybe someone who's got a chronic condition, which unfortunately makes being sick a part of your personality trait. But that would be incorrect, because apparently there's no such thing as ser enfermo in Spanish. Instead, we have to use ser enfermizo. For example, mi abuelo es enfermizo. Siempre tiene problemas de salud. Here are 2 more examples for you. Ese niño es enfermizo desde que nació. ¿Estás enfermo? Deberías ver al doctor. I hope it makes sense. Example number 9. Ser grave versus estar grave. This one could be slightly tricky. Este problema es muy grave. Necesitamos una solución inmediata. And mi tía está grave en el hospital. Ser grave is used to describe a situation that is serious or severe. Be very careful here. If you want to say that a person is serious, you can use ser serio instead, like mi jefe es muy serio. Now, estar grave is used to describe someone who is seriously ill. This one is similar to estar enfermo that we've just learned, but estar grave is much more serious. Estar grave makes you feel and look like you might die. But it doesn't mean you will. At the end of the day, we are using it with estar, which means that we hope that the condition you are in is temporary. But technically anything can happen. Here is another example. Después del accidente estuvo grave una semana. See, he felt like shit, but only for a week. It's all about a level of seriousness, and estar grave is a couple of points higher than estar enfermo. I hope that makes sense. Example number 10. Ser listo versus estar listo. This is the one you will have to memorize, because I cannot find the logic here. Ese detectivo es listo, siempre resuelve los casos, and estoy listo para el examen. When it comes to ser and estar definitions, ser and estar listo work just fine here. Ser listo describes someone who's clever or intelligent, where estar listo talks about a temporary state of being ready in the moment. However, when it comes to translation, I have no idea, I'm sorry. Maybe estar listo is trying to convey the idea of being smart but in the moment. Or maybe if we say estás lista para ir al cine, we're asking if you were smart enough to get ready on time, referring to punctuality. Oh shit, maybe this is it. Well, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you cannot find logic, just memorize it for now, because ser and estar listo is a very popular pair that you will be seeing and using a lot. Example number 11. Ser malo versus estar malo. Ese perro es malo, muerde a todos. No puedo ir al trabajo, estoy malo. Similarly to ser bueno, ser malo is used to describe someone's or something's inherent quality of being bad. But in case of estar malo, it doesn't have to do anything with being attractive, sexy, or tasty, unlike estar bueno, if you remember. Estar malo is another third way for us to say that you feel sick or bad. This one is actually more popular in my opinion than estar enfermo, but at least they seem to be on the same level of severity when it comes to describe how sick you are. Estar grave still would be the worst case scenario. Example number 12. Ser rico and estar rico. This one is not hard, but I thought I'd mention it because it's popular. For example, los países desarrollados son ricos. ¿Está rico el café? Ser rico is all about being rich when it comes to money and happiness. And estar rico is another way to say that something is rich in flavor, also known as tasty, similar to how we can use estar bueno. But in the case of estar rico, we only talk about the food, while estar bueno can be both describing something being tasty and sexy. Estar rico is a much safer option if you only want to talk about the food without being misunderstood. Example number 13. Ser seguro versus estar seguro. This pair is also very popular, but may not be obvious when it comes to translation. For example, este barrio es muy seguro, and estoy seguro de que va a llover. Seguro means safe in Spanish, so when we say ser seguro, it's an easy way to describe something that is safe. This is a characteristic or a personality trait. Nothing crazy, right? But when we say estar seguro, we mean to be certain or sure of something. Again, I have no idea why it is translated the way it is, but this pair is also something that you will be using all the time, so memorize it. Example number 14. Ser vivo versus estar vivo. This is our last example for today, and it's an interesting one. Mi abuelo es muy vivo para su edad, and después del accidente todavía está vivo. Ser vivo means to be smart or alive, but mentally, while estar vivo means to actually be alive, like meaning that your heart is beating. The reason why it's interesting because of how the Spanish language treats the concepts of life and death. You would think that being alive or dead is a permanent thing, but in reality it's just a state we currently find ourselves in. It gets even more interesting with being dead. In Spanish you would have to say estar muerto. For example, mi abuelo está muerto desde hace 5 años. You would think that being dead is as permanent as it can get in life, but in reality it's simply a change of state from being alive to being dead. And that happens to be the definition of estar. So what about ser muerto, you ask? Well, technically it exists, but you will find it mostly in formal or literary contexts, meaning to be killed or murdered, and only in a passive voice. For example, fue muerto en la guerra. But nowadays you would probably say fue asesinado or simply murió. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Just remember that when you want to say that someone or something is alive or dead, you would have to use estar vivo or estar muerto. Okay, that's enough for today. I understand if it feels overwhelming and like it's too much. That's why I remind you that there is a PDF document for you to download in a video description and hopefully the first comment, if I don't forget. It will include all the adjectives we discussed today and many, many more, so you can go at your own pace. So I highly encourage you to get it. This concludes the part 2 of Ser and Estar series. There'll be one more part where we're gonna bring everything together and practice and to make sure we understand everything. Again, part 1 can be found right here, and here is how to use the word coger correctly in Spanish. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, video suggestions, or maybe even threats. See ya!